My name is Captain Mike Rodriguez, and I've been flying private jets for 15 years. In that time, I've transported CEOs, politicians, celebrities, and their families across the country and around the world. You learn to be discreet in this business. What happens in the cabin stays in the cabin. But December 8th, 2019 changed everything for me. That was the day I flew Juice WRLD from Los Angeles to Chicago Midway Airport. It was supposed to be a routine 3-hour flight. Instead, it became the longest and most horrifying journey of my career. I'd flown Jared. That was Juice WRLD's real name. Jared Higgins, about a dozen times over the previous 2 years. He was always professional, usually quiet, often seemed exhausted from his schedule. Like a lot of young artists, he lived on energy drinks and barely slept, but he was polite to the crew and never caused problems. That morning, we departed from Van Nuys Airport around 1:30 a.m. Late flights weren't unusual for musicians. They keep different hours than most people. Jared boarded with his usual entourage, his girlfriend Ally, a couple of security guys, and some friend whose names I never learned. The first hour of the flight was completely normal. I could hear conversation and laughter from the cabin during my routine checks. Jared seemed relaxed, maybe even happy. He'd been working on new music, and from what I could overhear, he was excited about some tracks he'd just finished. But somewhere over New Mexico, things started to change. It began with Jared becoming restless. Through the cabin camera system, standard equipment for safety monitoring, I could see him pacing around the small cabin space, unable to sit still. At first, I thought he might be dealing with turbulence anxiety, even though the flight was smooth. Then I heard him talking to Ally, his voice getting louder and more agitated. Something's wrong. I can feel it. We shouldn't have taken this flight. Baby, you just tired, she replied. We'll be home soon. No, Ally. Something bad is gonna happen when we land. I can feel it in my chest, like something's waiting for us. I'd heard passengers express pre-flight anxiety before, but this was different. Jared sounded genuinely terrified, not just nervous. His breathing was becoming rapid and shallow, audible even through the intercom system. About 90 minutes into the flight, somewhere over Kansas, Jared called me on the cabin phone. Yo, Captain Mike, can we turn around? Turn around. We are more than halfway there. Jared, is everything okay? I don't know, man. I just got this feeling, like we are flying into something bad. Can we go back to LA? I explained that turning around would require filing new flight plans, additional fuel costs, and delays that would affect other scheduled flights. More importantly, I asked if there was a medical emergency that required immediate landing. Nah, no emergency. Just a bad feeling. I told him we'd continue to Chicago as planned, but that I'd monitor the weather and could divert to another airport if necessary. He didn't sound satisfied, but he accepted it. That's when things got really strange. Through the cabin monitoring system, I watched Jared pull out a large bottle of pills. Looked like prescription medication, but I couldn't see the label from the camera angle. He dumped what appeared to be a significant quantity into his palm, way more than any normal dose. Ally immediately tried to stop him. Jared, no, that's too many. You know, that's too many. I can handle it, he replied. I need something to calm down. This flight feels cursed. What happened next haunts me. Jared swallowed what looked like 15 to 20 pills in one handful. Ally was visibly upset. Other passengers were telling him to slow down, but he waved them off. It's fine. I've done more than this before. Within 20 minutes, Jared's behavior changed dramatically. The restless pacing stopped, and it became almost catatonic. He slumped in his seat, head rolling back, eyes half closed. When Ally tried to talk to him, his responses were slurred and barely coherent. "Jared, baby, can you hear me?" Yeah, I'm good. Just floating." But he wasn't good. Through the cabin camera, I could see his breathing becoming irregular. Sometimes he'd take rapid, shallow breaths. Other times he'd seem to stop breathing entirely for 10 or 15 seconds before gasping suddenly. That's when I called back to check on him directly. "Jared, this is Captain Mike. How are you feeling back there?" No response for several seconds. Then, in a voice that didn't sound like him at all, "I can see myself from outside the plane. That's weird, right?" My blood went cold. I'd heard about out-of-body experiences during medical emergencies, usually involving oxygen deprivation or severe drug reactions. "Jared, I need you to stay awake and keep talking to me, okay?" "I'm trying, but it's hard. Everything's getting dark around the edges." "Ally, why do you look so scared?" I could hear Ally crying now. "Because you took too many pills, Jared. Way too many. I'm scared." "Don't be scared. If something happens to me, just remember I loved you, okay? And tell my mom I tried to be good." Those words, "if something happens to me," sent panic through my entire body. I immediately radioed Chicago Midway Airport to request priority landing and emergency medical services on standby. Midway Tower. "This is November 7-4-9 Charlie requesting priority approach with medical emergency on board." "Roger, 749 Charlie. What's the nature of your medical emergency?" "Passenger showing signs of possible drug overdose, irregular breathing, altered consciousness, potential seizure risk." "Copy. Emergency medical services will be standing by." During the final 30 minutes of flight, Jared's condition deteriorated rapidly. His speech became completely incoherent, just mumbled sounds. His body started twitching involuntarily, small muscle spasms that gradually became more pronounced. Ally was holding his hand, crying, "Stay with me, Jared. Don't leave me. We are almost home." But Jared was already somewhere else. His eyes were open but completely unfocused, staring at something none of us could see. When he tried to speak, only gibberish came out. The purple, it's coming through the windows. There were no purple lights. The cabin lighting was normal white lead point. 20 minutes before landing, Jared started convulsing. Not violent seizures, but rhythmic, full-body spasms that lasted about 10 seconds each, with brief calm periods in between. Each episode seemed stronger than the last. That I've never felt so helpless in my life. I'm trained to handle mechanical emergencies, weather problems, even hijacking scenarios. But watching a 21-year-old kid slowly dying in the back of my plane, while I could do nothing but fly faster and pray would make it in time, was devastating. Midway Tower, 749 Charlie. Patient is now experiencing seizure activity. Requesting immediate clearance for approach. 749 Charlie. You're cleared for immediate approach. Runway 4 right. Emergency vehicles are in position. During our descent, Jared's seizures became more frequent and intense. Between episodes, he'd briefly regain consciousness and ask the same questions repeatedly. Are we there yet? Are we safe? Did we make it? Then he'd convulse again, his entire body rigid for 10 to 15 seconds before going completely limp. The final seizure began about 5 minutes before landing and didn't stop. Jared's body locked up completely, back arched, muscles tense, hands clenched into fists. Foam started coming from his mouth, and his breathing became erratic gasps while I was screaming, "He's not breathing right. Something's wrong. Jared, please wake up." I've never landed a plane faster or with more precision in my life. The moment our wheels touched the runway, I was on the radio. Ground control, medical emergency is critical. Patient experiencing continuous seizure activity and respiratory distress. Paramedics were already running toward the plane before I'd even finished taxiing to the gate. But when they boarded, Jared was unconscious, blue around the lips, and barely breathing. I watched them perform CPR while carrying him off the plane. His body looked so small on that stretcher, nothing like the vibrant young man who'd boarded 3 hours earlier day. An hour later, I got the call from the hospital. Jared Higgins, known professionally as Juice WRLD, had died of an overdose-induced seizure. The pills he'd taken during the flight, oxycodone and codeine, had essentially shut down his nervous system. But here's what the media never reported. Jared didn't accidentally overdose. He deliberately took a massive quantity of pills because he was terrified of what would happen when we landed. Later, I learned that federal agents were waiting at Midway Airport to search the plane. Jared somehow knew this. Maybe he'd been tipped off, maybe he was being watched, or maybe it was just his anxiety and paranoia. But he chose to consume his entire stash of pills rather than face arrest. The official report stated that law enforcement found guns and drugs on the plane after Jared's death. What it didn't mention was that he'd essentially committed suicide to avoid prosecution. For months afterward, I replayed that flight in my mind, wondering if I could have done something different. Should I have declared a medical emergency earlier? Should I have refused to continue the flight when he asked to turn around? Should I have physically intervened when I saw him taking the pills? But the truth is, Jared was trapped by his addiction, his fame, and his fear of legal consequences. He saw no way out except to swallow his problems literally, even though he knew it might kill him. The saddest part was listening to him talk about his music during the first hour of that flight. He was excited about new songs, about collaborating with other artists, about his future. He had so much left to create, so much love to give. But addiction doesn't care about talent or potential or the people who love you. It just wants to consume everything until there's nothing left. I still fly private jets, but I pay much closer attention to my passengers now. I watch for signs of impairment, for dangerous behavior, for that particular kind of desperation that Jared displayed during his final flight. Because sometimes the most dangerous turbulence isn't in the air. It's inside the people we are carrying. Jared Higgins was a brilliant artist, a loving boyfriend, and a son who wanted to make his mother proud. He was also a young man struggling with demons that ultimately consumed him at 40,000 feet. While I helplessly watched from the cockpit, his death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a preventable loss that happened because addiction, fame, and fear created a perfect storm that no one knew how to navigate. If you're struggling with substance abuse, please get help before you're facing your own version of that final flight. Because once you're in the air, swallowing your problems instead of facing them, it might be too late to turn around.